Good evening, everyone. Quick look here at the North American equity markets, which did move higher today, stopping a two-day losing streak. We will get to the markets in just a second because the real news surrounds the Bank of Canada today, the BOC being the first big central banker to dial back the quantitative easing from a minimum of $4 billion a week to $3 billion. So in other words, tapering a little bit, taking a little bit of money or liquidity out of the system because they believe that we are in fact seeing economic progress, to which they increased their growth rate expectations for 2021 for the economy from 4% back in January to 6.5%. They also note that inflation will pick up, but it will be transitory, but they do expect us to get to a sustainable 2% inflation level by mid-2022. So that was the big takeaway in the markets, really, from a headline perspective. All eyes on the Canadian Central Bank, the BOC. And again, it did move the Canadian dollar higher. Now back to the markets, the TSX was up by 0.5% today. Headlines are a little bit on the quiet side in terms of stock-specific news. We did see healthcare stocks up on the TSX on average by about 4%, really led by the cannabis companies, which moved higher today. And we also saw some nice moves higher in the Canadian banks. BMO, for one, was up by 1%. Of course, the potential for a higher interest rate environment can help some of the financial companies like the banks. Rogers was up by 0.4%. Their revenue and earnings did beat expectations. And when we take a look at the U.S. markets, the Dow and S&P were up by about 1%. We saw some nice moves higher in the NASDAQ, up by 1.2%. And the Russell 2000, which has shown so much weakness as of late, a lot of profit taking there, was actually up by 2.4%. So the small cap companies getting a nice rebound today. We did also see value outperform growth. So we saw materials, energy, financials, and industrials lead those U.S. markets higher. Energy, interestingly, was up despite the fact that WTI was down by about 2%. In terms of the narrative going on in the United States, of course, we're in the midst of earnings season. 15% of the S&P 500 companies have already reported, and their growth rate is coming in above expectations. The growth rate is 31%. Of course, you're anniversarying some weakness from last year, of course. But the expectations were for 24% growth back in the end of the fourth quarter. So beating expectations. We've also seen 85% of the companies that have reported beat the consensus expectations on the earnings front as well. So important takeaways. Now, in terms of some of the commentary from various company managements, relatively upbeat. But when you look at the stock reaction, maybe not so much. And I've talked about this week that perhaps some of the expectations are elevated. So just be aware of that. In terms of some stock-specific stories, Netflix, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. It ended the day down by about 7%. They did have a miss on the subscriber numbers, as we discussed, and the company management is saying that's because they pulled forward some of those new subscribers back in 2020 when we were all, of course, locked down. And also, of course, a bit of a lighter content slate might be affecting Netflix new subscribers as well. Intuitive Surgical, a medical equipment company that I love to look at. They own the Da Vinci, which is a robotic system for surgeries. I've known this company since 2005 when I was at Deutsche Bank. It was a small cap company then, not anymore. They had a big beat and also raised their expectations. So a couple of items there to watch. But again, the big news today was really what was going on with the central bankers. We'll see if any other bankers follow suit. It does have to do with expectations for a better economic recovery. At the same time, I should mention, though, that the downside risk to the Bank of Canada's outlook would be, of course, the third wave of COVID cases in Canada. And the upside to their outlook really is driven by the consumer. So we'll see how the consumer fares in Canada. I'll leave it there and have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.